Dr. Maxine Newlands, Senior Lecturer in Political Science at James Cook University. You've made it into the studio.
I have.
We have had changes in the state cabinet, some very big changes, some key changes. In fact, I would dare say more key changes in the state cabinet this week than we normally get at a Eurovision Song Contest final.
Well, that's a big statement to make. Wow.
Yes.
Yes, a big old reshuffle. So very interesting, though, of course, because our Premier, Anastasia Palaszczuk, often says, don't keep changing the proverbial deck chairs on the Titanic expression.
Right.
And those key issues, so housing, the environment, crime.
And, of course, health.
And health, all change of seats in those important positions. So.
Let's take a look at that list because some of those major changes, Shannon Fentiman taking responsibility for health and ambulance services, mental health and women. Megan Scanlon taking the responsibility for the new standalone priority portfolio of housing. Leanne Enoch, responsibility for treaty, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander partnerships, communities and the arts. Di Farmer, responsibility for youth justice. And Yvette Darth going back into Attorney General, a role that she's had in the past.
Yeah, so some seeing that as a bit of a demotion for her, taking
Is it
away.
though?
Well,
How do we rate? Because I was trying to talk to someone about this the other day, because you would think that all ministerial portfolios are as important as the other. But is health more important or seen as more senior in government ranks than being the Attorney General?
So in government, normally, in like the federal government, you've got the big tickets, if you like. They're always defence, foreign affairs. So we've got Penny Wong. And the ones that are at state level are, health and so anything that affects the day-to-day. So stuff like, and that's why crime as well is in there. So, but then that's not to dismiss the Attorney General role, because Attorney General is effectively the state solicitor. So the person that, when we need something legally done, and we've been hearing about this a lot at different levels around the different ministries that Scott Morrison adopted, shall we say?
Yes.
So that was all down to the Attorney General's advice. So, but the ones that where we are, people are looking, we know that there's issues around rental accommodation availability and housing, and they're the ones that get the media attention as well as the sort of very important social tickets. So that's why I think with Megan Scanlon, she's moved from environment and a couple of things, but she's doing is looking at housing. So she's not, if you look at the other ones you just rattled off the list, there's quite a lot of different, quite varied actually, roles in there. But it is purely just about focusing on housing because that's going to be an issue.
And it was an interesting comment from Megan Scanlon yesterday. She was saying that she's, young herself and is actually a renter. So she said that she fully understands what these issues are. The Premier was asked yesterday about these various changes and why they're coming around now. This is what Anastasia Palaszczuk had to say.
I want fresh eyes and I want fresh energy. And it is my decision about where ministers go, and it is my view that Shannon Fentiman is the best person to be the Health Minister, and it is my view that Yvette Darth is the best person to be the State's Attorney General.
That was the Premier speaking yesterday. Now, we know that the state election is next year. Yep. Is this a measured approach or is this a panic approach? How would you rate this?
I think given it's so far out from the election, 18 months, then it's probably a measured approach. It's a preventative approach because those big ticket items that we were saying, the ones that are getting the media attention, are going to become issues when we go to vote next, not this October, the following October. So it's a bit of a preventative. It's trying to get some stability within the cabinet in order for them when it comes to election time, in probably about 6 months, we've done this, this and this, and we will forget about what we've maybe heard criticisms more recently.
So in that time, we're expecting to see, obviously, a lot of social housing, a lot of pressure taken off people with their rental stress, but also in the health area where we've been talking about the waits for beds, ambulance ramping, maternity services in regional centres, which in some communities don't have anything like that.
Right.
is there time to fix all of this, or will the opposition be looking at this and saying, well, these are the key issues that we're going to target over the next period until the election?
So there'll be a two-pronged attack. As far as the current government or the government sitting of the day, there will be a lot of focus on those issues in the next budget. So the next state budget, we can see a lot of money being put into those issues. And as you say, there'll be, expansions of maternity wards, particularly in central Queensland. It's been a very pertinent issue. Where it's never going to be enough for the opposition, but it'll be a question of whether they feel there's enough leverage there and there's enough support. Something like youth crime, and it's always constantly youth crime. We've seen recently the government have put in those new legislation measures. Remember, we talked about including things like social media use now and breach of bail and all that. If that's going to be, that will probably always be the same, because it's been something constant since, probably as far as I can remember back, kind of thing. So there'll be those stalwart positions like youth crime. Housing may get fixed. Health is always an issue, so that'll probably stay on the agenda. So it will be housing where you'll see quite a lot of money as well from the budget. And anything that comes out in that budget will identify the direction of what the government wants to do, bearing in mind that the current government in Queensland are going for a fourth term. It's quite unprecedented. It's hard. Gets hard at this stage because
been in
people
power
are
for
like,
a long time.
And what have you done for us? And the opposition know that, and they're going to be pushing on that.
Yes, and just finally on this, does it send a message generally to the community that the government and the Premier in particular is being strong on this, or do you think that the opposition will say, well, I think they've put out a few press releases already that, we're just changing the faces, but there's real no change actually happening here?
Well, you're always going to get that, and time will tell. That is the one. We'll have to see what those announcements and what those the moving around of the positions change. I think the other thing of note as well is moving Leanne Enoch. So she was originally in Environment, and now where did she go before? Sorry. But she's gone to Treaty. And,
Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Partnerships, Communities and the Arts.
That's right. And she's an Indigenous woman herself, so I think that also sends a signal of where some of the focus is going to be in the next 12 months from the government.
All right. So lots going on in state circles this week. All came rather unexpectedly, didn't it? You weren't really expecting a big change, but there we go. We've seen those changes take place. We also had a bit of a surprise in the middle of the week when the US president said that he wasn't coming to Australia anymore because of the issue of the debt ceiling in the United States. And those meetings are still going forward, which essentially provides money for the government to do its business over there in the States. There could be a shutdown.
It's the ongoing soap opera saga. So, effectively, this is the household purse or the budget. So we all have an X amount that we spend on, what comes in and what goes out. And this is for the entire United States of America. So it's a thing called the debt ceiling. So they have the debt ceiling and they say, okay, we can't get in any more debt than this. And then they have a bit of a conversation and say, well, we've got this bill coming in and this, and we owe, because they owe China quite a lot of money. They're the biggest debtors is to China. So we'll increase that ceiling. And this has happened, and this is what's happening now. So the last time we saw this, I think, was under Barack Obama.
Yes.
And
there was a long shutdown for that, wasn't there? Like things like national parks and galleries and
driving licence or
they all
public service
closed.
tax offices, all those close. So this time we're seeing the same thing happening. But what's interesting about this one is that you've got an internal, within the Republican Party, you've got the Freedom Caucus, they're called, and that is your Marjorie Taylor Greens and your Matt Gaetz this hub, which are trying to push it to the brink so that they can get deals done on things like gun reform, or not done, so to speak, so they can stop. So it's a game of poker. And because they did exactly the same thing to get the speaker elected, do you remember we had the 14th go or something?
Yes,
it was
took
crazy.
forever. Yeah.
And it was their influence. So but effectively, if the American economy defaults on the debt, that will drop them into recession. That will have an impact on the global economy, and it'll hit us as well because things will cost more. So we're seeing how much more things cost because of the Ukraine war. It'll be a lot more if we see the US fall. But like every good American story, there's always a cliffhanger at the end.
Isn't there? We'll see what happens with that. Though I must say, if America's debt's in the trillions now, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Does it really matter if it increases? They're never going to pay that back, are they?
It's 47.2 trillion. I think that's dollars in Aussie dollars. So 31 trillion. I mean,
good luck paying that.
Yeah,
back.
exactly.
It's never going to happen. Anyway, let's move on. Finally, we've heard that Anthony Albanese is off to Japan today. Hiroshima, the location for the G7 meeting, at a time when there's a lot of instability around the world.
Yeah, so this was going to be President Biden was going to come here, and we're going to have the Quad, which was the group with India in Sydney, and then all tootle off to Japan. So the G7, very interesting. A lot of geopolitics going on in this one. There'll be issues around trade, but Taiwan is going to be an issue. So because obviously America and Australia support Taiwan's independence from China, there's going to be deals and conversations had with Japan, which are old allies of the States and particularly of Australia as well. Don't know my history that well. And, so this is it's another one of those occasions where it's a show of strength to the world, and it's a bit of a block and a coming together as a unit, if you like, in order to sort of progress and push back some of the challenges from China. Although we have seen this week that the trade embargoes on timbers now being lifted, which is a sign of the thawing, if you like, of those trade issues.